Tamat.
You did?
Yes,
Tamat.
We Tamat
for
for over a year. Sometimes ground school for those who are starting and those who are continuing, because I already had my licenses. It was between the Ivorian army, rebels, and then the French armed forces also sucked into it. And now for us, we are caught in between. So that's how now, and I remember it was 2004. October.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to another episode of Who Owns Kenya. And today I'm joined by Captain Waweru Mwangi, an experienced pilot with over 30 years experience. Imagine 30 years, and I'm so humbled to have him. Karibu sana, Captain. Hi Captain, how are you?
Very well,
Thank you
Grace?
so, I'm very good. Thank you so much for such a warm welcome. We're very happy to be here. Tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up? What's your background?
Okay, my name is, my full names are Captain Waweru Mwangi, and I grew up in the village, a small village called Ivory in Githunguri County, Kiambu district. But my initial formative years, that is the late 60s and the early 70s, I lived in Nanyuki.
Okay.
That's where my father used to work with. He used to work with the Kenya Army. So we lived across the Laikipia Airways, as they call it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So where did you go to school?
I went
High school.
for my initially also I started my schooling in Nanyuki. Then thereafter we shifted and moved to the village.
Okay.
Same village called Kivabu. It's in Kino location in the Uguri County. And for my primary school, I went to Kino Primary School from Saturday 1 to Saturday 7, from 1973 to 1979. And then thereafter, I wanted to become a priest.
Really?
Yes,
a priest?
Yeah, priest. I wanted to become a priest in the village. Those days was the thing to be. And I remember we had quite a number of white priests who were actually we used to admire them. The way that they're respecting the village, the way they used to carry themselves, the way they used to treat us. So as a young person, you feel like these are all to be. And I was an altar boy for a long time. I also used to teach or take the younger people and the older ones through catechism.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes. And then thereafter, I joined the Queen of Apostles Junior Seminary from 1980 to 1983.
Okay.
But along the way, I lost the calling, and I felt I needed to do something else. When I was growing up in Nanyuki, that's when I actually had the feeling and the interest in aviation, because I used to see, the army garrison is on one side, the air base on the other side. And we used to go to church inside the garrison, the air base. So I used to see aircraft flying, so that's why I developed interest as a young boy in nursery school. So during that time, the reason I've talked about that is because that was my initial passion, not becoming a priest. My initial passion was to become a fighter pilot.
As a child, right?
Yeah, as a child, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And so, fast forward, during my schooling in junior seminary, that passion and interest now came back. And I felt now my calling now is on the other side. I want to become an Air Force pilot and had worked hard. So I did seminary only up to from 1 to Form 4. Then thereafter, after our exams, I was admitted to Dagoretti High School for my A-levels from 5 and 6. Then thereafter, during those days after A-level, you used to take a couple of years before you join university. So I used to do odd jobs in the village. And I also used to combine that with teaching. You could teach high school.
So even up to you completing your high school, you're still fixated on doing aviation?
Yes. And not actually getting fixated. That interest is also it's a
Just
passion.
an interest in it.
A very big
Yeah.
interest.
Did you do anything to feed this interest after?
Yes, I did. I used to go to. I actually borrowed some money.
Okay.
My grandmother lent me some money,
Mhm.
and I did a couple of hours in Wilson. And after going solo, then going solo is when you fly on your own.
Okay.
So after that, I felt I didn't have enough money.
Mhm.
So I decided now to follow my passion. I tried to tried recruitment with the Air Force.
Mhm.
In a way, it doesn't work out so well. Sometimes it would work out, but then eventually I applied. I met a friend of mine. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years back. I don't know why. I remember his name because he's the one who actually introduced me to, discouraged me from joining the Air Force.
Okay.
I told me it's better to go and train, do the flying in either in Canada or the US.
So all this time were your parents supportive of your decision to pursue
Everybody
this
was very,
career?
very supportive, but in the village, sometimes people try to think you're mad. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, because an aircraft at a village board.
Mhm.
Why are aircraft going to land in the village?
Yeah.
You see, but it's just that you can't really fault them because they're not exposed. The only place they see aircraft is when they are flying over their houses. But for me, I had seen it. I had seen the pilots, and actually the people who really inspired me more were the former. Most of them actually have left the Air Force.
Okay.
I used to see them when they go to church. And when I saw, black people coming out of aircraft, because the movies, you used to see all the mzungus
Yeah.
flying. Sorry,
That's
right?
true.
Yeah. So.
Because you didn't have any local people that looked like you that were in that position at the time.
No, there were. There was a talking about that inspired me.
That inspired you.
Yeah,
to pursue.
and at that particular time, small kids whose parents were working in the armed forces, they could allow us to go to the air side.
Okay.
And that's when I saw some of the older pilots.
Mhm.
And luckily, I think I would say luckily, I came to meet someone. I joined Kenya Airways, and some taught me.
Wow.
My instructors in Kenya Airways, and I joined as a
When was
second
this?
officer.
When was this?
I joined Kenya Airways in 1995, October 1995.
So did you mentioned someone advised you to seek this training elsewhere.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you do that?
Yeah, I did exactly that. I think I must have jumped that point. I did A levels in 1984, 1985. Then went back to the village, odd jobs, teaching high school, and also coaching football, high school students football. Then thereafter I applied in one of the colleges in the US, and then that took me about two years to organize. I went to Bolivar School of Aeronautics, where I did I got my initial licenses. That is a PPL, private pilot license, then instrument rating, and then thereafter commercial, and then multi-engine rating. Multi-engine means aircraft with more than one engine. And initially I went to, the initial school that I went to was in a small town called Bolivar, that is in Tennessee. That was in between Memphis and Nashville. I stayed there. I was there for about 8 months, and thereafter, because you know how US is, you cannot just sit in school. I had a lot of friends in the US, and we communicated. Some were living in New Jersey, others in New Hampshire. So the ones in New Hampshire invited me to go up there and join them. So what I did is actually it took me about to leave school and travel from Bolivar. I took a bus in Memphis, Greyhound, and it took me 4 days to travel, and it was winter. But I enjoyed myself.
So now, Captain, over here, you were telling us now you got a chance to go do your training in the US. Tell us about your life as a student in the US. Coming from the village, you're this person who followed your dreams, and finally you're doing your training. How was life?
Life was, I would say, fascinating. Was exciting because I got what I wanted.
Yes.
And here it is actually within my grasp. The only challenge I had was initially was I didn't have funds. I had a very little money.
Okay.
But I felt I had faith and I believed in myself so much. You know, in the village, surprisingly, life in the village, as people tend to misunderstand it, you actually develop very strong character. The way you know, in the village you're not brought up, you grow up,
Yeah.
isn't it? And that now forms your formative years. It actually makes you a very, very stable child
Yeah.
and as an adult.
Yeah.
So, coupled with that, my life in the US was quite exciting, was good, and I didn't even have a second thought that I'm going to a new place, I've never been there.
Yeah.
Actually, to be very honest, the first time, because I took Lufthansa from Nairobi, Frankfurt, Kentucky to Memphis, Memphis to Bolivar, and actually I was arriving at night. Was quite exciting. I really enjoyed it because I knew that I'm getting to my destination. And my destination was I want to get my flying license and my flying going. So to me, the way you will feel like you're misplaced, you're in the wrong place, or you're feeling like you're missing home. I never missed home at any moment. My mind and my
Really?
sight was
You were never
focused.
homesick or anything?
No, I was never homesick.
Okay.
I was, and also at the same time, remember also as I was telling you, in the village, it teaches you to be on your own. If you don't work hard as an individual, nobody cares.
Yeah.
So that actually formed me and made me who I am today. So my life in the US as a student, I will tell you, I've never had a better time and a good time in my life, where you are interacting. And to make it even more interesting, here I am, the school, where it was in Bolivar, that small town. You're within the accommodation or hostels. We're actually inside the airfield because the school had its own airport.
Okay.
And you see now you're interacting with other students from different countries or Japanese guys, some sponsored by Japanese Air Force. And we also had quite a number from, I remember there was a guy called Michael, used to call him Crazy Michael. He was Irish. And then we also had a lot of, actually different nationalities, all over the world. It was actually multicultural, was actually international, yes, which was really good. And surprisingly, I have met some of them in my flying career.
Really?
Yeah, Kina
As
Joseph.
passengers or
No, pilots.
Oh,
Some are
really?
flying for, what do you call that, Spanish airline, Iberia. Yeah, there are some I met in Gatwick.
Okay.
We were going for training and also they were actually operating there. And we met, and actually two of them were sharing the same hostel.
Oh, that's
the same
nice.
hostel. So to me, the only two that I really wanted to meet thereafter, because life was quite interesting, because we used to challenge each other.
Okay.
And they used to call me, sometimes they'll switch off the lights at night and start enjoying me. Oh, we can't see you, you're so dark, we can't see you.
Were you there
You
in
can,
black?
yeah,
Oh.
for quite some time I was only
The
black.
black student,
And
yeah.
then thereafter I was joined by Henry Olale. He was a very interesting character from Nigeria.
Also, you didn't have any other schoolmates who were from Kenya?
No, I was the only, I was the only
in
Kenyan.
the school.
And we were very few, 99% were white.
Okay.
Yes.
So tell us now, after the training, when did you start practicing?
Oh,
Where
now
did you
I think
start?
where I need now to tell you maybe a little more is I moved out of, I shifted from Memphis and went to New Hampshire. And I took, as I was telling you, my trip took 4 days. And it was quite interesting. So I went, and there were some friends in New Hampshire who received me. One was a former schoolmate called Kahobu Jenga, and was actually my classmate. And he also wanted to be a priest before, but he went to the US ahead of me. And then it was good. I met a lot of Kenyans. They taught me how you survive in the US. And I stayed with them for a short time, maybe like 2 months. And then they showed me how to survive. And then I started, I got a job. And I used to work during the day. Initially, I worked in a small restaurant as a dishwasher.
So you were still in school?
No. By then I had just moved, shifted. It took me like 3-4 months before I could resume flying because I had to I didn't have money. And you see there's also living expenses. I needed to get a place to stay, pay my own. You don't rely on other people. You see. And surprisingly, I met very generous families who actually received me with both hands, and they made my life very, very comfortable. And my first car in the US, I was actually given by Thiongo family, and they also received me warmly. They also hosted me. I stayed with them for a while, and then thereafter I sold that car. I bought another one, and then the 2 jobs, one in the morning, one during the day, one at night, because I wanted to accumulate and save some money to get some deposit for me not to resume flying, which I did. I worked in a small restaurant. It was not actually a very small one, dishwashing, and then at night I got another job in a factory called Molden Mills, where they taught me or trained me to weave. I'm a very good weaver.
Really?
You know, textiles. You see those textiles? I'm a very, very good weaver.
Oh, wow.
And the pay was good because they started me at in 1989. If you're earning $755 an hour,
That's a lot.
it was good money.
And you were able eventually to accumulate enough money.
I did the deposit, but I made an arrangement with the school called Daniel Webster, and I was paying. We agreed because we are being paid weekly. You know, Americans pay weekly. So I was paying whenever I get a check every end of the week, I'll split it into 2. Some of the money goes to school, and you know, flying is not cheap. If you had not made that arrangement, I don't think I would have made it.
Wow.
Yeah, so they were quite nice. And then I worked hard. I used to work. After I resumed school, I stopped working in the restaurant. Because I was working at night, I go to school during the day. So it was not easy. So because I had to work long hours. And there are times because I was staying alone initially. But then later on I got a roommate.
So you could share costs.
Now we could share costs. An American gentleman who used to work with Raytheon. You know, these guys who manufacture or make missiles, Patriot missiles. That's why he was working. And was a very nice person. They were Irish, but Irish American, but very nice one. So that's how I was able to pay for my flying. And so I used to work at night, and then go to school during the day. But also whenever I got like overtime, they used to go. Actually, they liked me. They used to call me, and then you can imagine, within 2 months, my salary had shot up from $755 to $955 an hour.
Wow.
So it was still
They were
good
very
money.
impressed about you.
Oh yeah. They used to call me. I used to, this is not, your mother is not with you.
Yeah. And
So you're in a foreign country. And I was really determined.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was driving me to work this hard was that at the back of my mind I had a responsibility. Because when I left, our daughter was 3 months old.
Oh, you were already married by the time.
Almost married, yes.
Okay.
And what was pushing me was like, no, I'm not going to leave my baby. Then we work hard. If they're able to come to the US, well and good. But if not, then I better work hard, finish up my flight, get my licenses, and go back home and look for a job. Yes. So that was at the back of my mind. It was telling me, you have a responsibility. And I also wanted to prove to my parents because they were very, very supportive. Not only my parents, for me to get air ticket, we did a harambe in the village, of which someone would give you 5 shillings, 10 shillings. Yes, they were behind me. And another person who really played a very big role in my life and for me to be able to go to the US is the late Honorable Arthur Mabuku. We also became friends. He really facilitated. And that's how he supported me and sponsored me initially to get a visa to the US. And I think that time everything was working. At some point, everything worked for me, right? And I'm always very, very appreciative to anyone, especially my parents, my brothers.
Yeah.
I don't have any sisters, brothers. My parents and even relatives and even well-wishers. And I cannot also fail to mention a lawyer like, she's called Nani, Lilian Mwaura. I'm always planning, even up to now, I think I have to go and visit her. I need to take a good to her because she also did a lot.
Okay.
My own grandmother, they were very close, very good friends.
So when you were in the US and back when you went in Navy, there were a lot of people.
Oh yes, I
contributed
wanted to show these people your efforts,
are not
your
in vain.
encouragement are not in vain.
Mm.
And luckily, then after finishing and doing my training in the US, initially I wanted to continue with academics. But then also at the back of my mind, I was like, oh, I'm going to lose my degree. And I was like, oh no, go back. Because I enrolled at Law University because I wanted to do military science. And then, yes, I was admitted and I started, but then along the way I started actually calling. I didn't know, by then it would have been easy for me to join the American Armed Forces, but it didn't. What kept on pulling me at some point was I called somebody at the Kenyan embassy in Washington, and I asked them whether if I come back I can join the Air Force, because that's what initially I was feeling. Oh, I lost the other chance. Why don't I try this time round? So he told me, no, it's you can try, and but it's not guaranteed that if you go you get it. But then at the same time, I also called somebody else who was working with Kenya Airways, and he encouraged me to come back. And he told me, you might stand a chance. Why don't you, when you're in the US, it may not be as easy because you can't apply from there.
Yeah.
You come back home, come and do your, because then by then I had American licenses.
So you had to get
FAA.
a local.
So I came back, it's called conversion. You do exams and a couple of flights, then you get a Kenyan license. So most of us now have two licenses, FAA and the Kenya license, Kenyan licenses. So in 1992, I came back and I started now the process of converting my American license to Kenyan license. Did quite a lot of exams, which are not that easy, but we made it. And then thereafter, tarmacked.
You did?
Yes,
you tarmacked?
We
Yeah,
tarmacked for over a year, and then once in a while I'll get small teaching jobs at Kenya School of Flying, sometimes ground school for those who are starting and those who are continuing, because I already had my licenses. And then one time, and this is also something that was a turning point in my life as well, when I was flying at Wilson, initially when I was doing some hours, just before I went to the US, I had met a very, very nice gentleman called Patrick Waweru. And we started talking. There was a small restaurant in Wilson. He was taking tea, I was taking tea. So the way you just do a tete-a-tete, you're talking one-on-one, he's asking you what are you doing, what you're doing, telling him I'm doing some flying at Pegasus Flyers. Oh, okay, you have to be a pilot. Oh, okay, then he told me where he was. He used to work he was a pilot in the Air Force. But they had a company they were running in Wilson by then. But then thereafter, I went to the US. But when I came back, and that was and I was teaching ground school at Kenya School of Flying. Then I met Captain Wendo again, and he asked me, "Oh, Waweru, you're back. Where have you been all this time?" I told him, "Oh, I went to the US, and now I have my licenses. Have you converted?" I told him, "Yes. Come and see me tomorrow."
Wow.
And I was like, "Hey, come and see you?" Yes. And I went home, and I told my wife, I met a long-time friend called Captain Wendo, and he has asked me to go and see him tomorrow. And I woke up very early in the morning, and I went to see him, and I sat at his office until after he told me, just be patient, just chill. You know the way somebody will talk to you nicely. He was really, really nice to me. Only for him in the afternoon to give me a shock of my life. He was teaching. He was also using his aircraft to teach people who are converting to get their Kenyan instrument rating. So at around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I see a group of other young men who had licenses as well come in, and Captain Wendo calls me, "Hey, Waweru, come, sit here." then I'm like, okay. So I sat, and he started teaching, giving us a briefing. I'm like, oh, what is going on? Then finally, he told us, now after he briefed us, he's a very good instructor, very nice person. He took us to the aircraft. So one of the guys, captain, he's called Olentutu. The Olentutu family, they are prominent in Narok.
Yeah.
And we were about five of us. So Olentutu started the session. He flew. We went to we call it the local area. We did instrument rating, instrument flying, handling, and all that, aircraft handling. This was a Cessna 310, it's a twin engine. Then after a few minutes, Captain Waweru says, where are you next? Then I'm like, what? Everything started happening.
Yeah.
So I took the seat. Then he took me through the motions of getting to handle the aircraft. Or there's a handled a similar aircraft in flying school. But then this one here, you see, I'm very excited. I have not even paid a single cent. You're supposed to pay. But for me, I had not paid even a single cent.
Yeah.
So after that, we came back. The others also took turns.
Okay.
Then he told me tomorrow morning, come to
So how
Wilson.
did it go the first day?
It was nice. I was still good. I was handling it.
Yeah.
And he was quite impressed.
Yeah.
So then the following day, after finishing, after debrief, he said, I didn't have a log because he just told me to come. So
Yeah.
I had to write my hours somewhere. We normally have a book we call a log book where we normally fill in the hours that you fly. And maybe to tell you right now, I've got over 15,000 hours of flying.
Wow.
So you can imagine how many books I have. And I'm sure the others will be even bigger.
Yeah.
Now, so Captain Waweru told me, come tomorrow, but come to very, very early in the morning. What time, Captain? I want you to be here before 4 in the morning.
4 a.m.
Yeah, so I had to, and by then I was to come by Matatu to Wilson from Gurunguri.
Oh, you were still living in
I was still living in Gurunguri. My wife was teaching at a school called Ivory. She's a high school teacher.
Okay.
And that's why she was teaching, so I had not to travel to Nairobi. So I had to wake up about 2 in the morning to get Matatu and come all the way to Wilson. So when I came to Wilson, the next thing he tells me, we are going to Mogadishu. What? And you're flying? And I was like, Captain, anyway, I just said, with him, I'm good, I'm comfortable. I'm with one of the best.
Passenger flight?
No. It was Mera flying.
Okay.
We started doing Mera.
Okay.
And we flew to Mogadishu that day. And then when we came back,
you came back the same day?
No, we came back the same day.
Okay.
Then we came back. He told me, you go have lunch and then come back. I went, had my lunch, and then we continued with the previous string, the one that the same guys. And surprisingly, he took a lot of interest in me. And I started, so I actually had an edge over the others. Because for me, you see now, I'm coming in the morning, I fly with the United Airlines, by then the company was called United Airlines.
Okay.
I fly with United Airlines to Mogadishu.
It was a day?
So it's a different, I was doing it daily.
Wow.
Then come back, when you come back, we call them instrument approaches.
Okay.
Come and practice instrument approaches to Jomo Kenyatta, then we'll go and land in Wilson. Then in the afternoon, we continued like that for about 4 days. Then there on the 5th day, and then in the afternoon, we go and do the normal training. So it only took me about 5 days. And the 6th day, he told me, you're ready for your check. The examiner is coming, go to KCA and pay. So I went, paid for my flight test. And then I remember my flight test was done by Captain Jama. They were together in the Air Force. But Captain Jama was then an examiner, and I was a captain in Kenya Airways. So he came, did my check. I passed. That time I did alone. Because you do alone, I went, came back. He told me, you've done well. I passed, he signed my logbook, my license. So you have to take that one out to KCA so that they stamp. We call it a rating. So I got a rating on my license. After getting the rating, I came back, the stamp from KCA. When I brought it to Captain Waweru, and by then there were partners there, Captain Elian Valley. He told me, come back tomorrow morning. Then I'm like, okay. So when I came back the following morning, they put me on the same aircraft that we are using for training was actually also doing Mira in the morning. Do Mira in the morning, in the afternoon goes for training. So, do you know what they said to me? They told me, now you're good, you fly on your own. So I flew on my own to Airways.
So you used to fly with Captain Wendo?
Yeah, this
To
company.
Mogadishu?
Initially it was Captain Wendo and there were other pilots.
Okay.
Like there was Mark, who was, I think was Danish. And then there was Michael, I think he was from Belgium. Then there were, who else? There were two, the late Captain Morini. Captain Morini passed away.
So now he's giving you the go-ahead?
No, I flew on my own.
Okay.
I flew Mira to Airwork.
Wow.
And
So you
I
were
came
contracted, but then now you are working for them? Or?
No, I don't know. They have not told me.
They're not, you are just doing it. If you
I'm
don't
just
do
doing it.
Okay.
And then they'll give me bus fare.
Okay.
But they have not told me I'm employed. Then the following day I come back, they send me to Mogadishu.
You do it.
I said, then the guys were like, I think I'm one of the few pilots, especially during that time, who actually started their flight on a multi-engine, not single engine.
Okay.
I was flying on a, by then, flying a twin engine, I'm young. I was,
It's a big deal, eh?
I think I was 22.
Wow.
Yeah,
You were 22?
I think I was 22. And I'm like, guys were like, you look at this guy, he's flying, because
Yeah.
everybody else, majority of even the ones that I had trained with, they were flying single engine aircraft. And here I am flying twin engine. I was like, But anyway, to me, it's not that I became, it was very satisfying because now I could see my career now taking off. So thereafter, I flew that one, then I flew other aircraft that they had they had a fleet of aircraft. Then after some time, I left. I started flying freelance. We used to fly for other charter companies, Mira. And then I remember also one time I went to Tanzania for a couple of months during 1995 around February, and they were doing campaigns. So I was flying CCM MPs in their trips, in their campaign rallies, and then thereafter, then same year, 1995, Kenya Airways advertised. So before going to Tanzania, I had put in my CV, and then after my trip in Tanzania, I came back. Actually, 2 weeks after I came back, I was invited for an interview by Kenya Airways, and we were many. And they wanted only 3 pilots then, and you were actually the applicants were more than 50, because you also Kenya flying for your airline, it is everybody's dream. So even guys who had a lot of experience from the Air Force, Police Air Wing, flying Mira, my fellow guys who were flying Mira within Wilson, we all trooped to KQ, and so we did the interview. It took us about a month. And luckily, out of about 50 or so people, I was one of the 3 that were picked.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, this is nice. Yeah? And by the way, and during the interview, the way you become nervous. I was never nervous. Every time I go, if I get it, well and good. If I don't, I go back and start flying my Mira. Isn't it? Yeah. So then after that, my airline career took off. And
so officially started working?
It's in 1995, on the 2nd of October 1995.
Wow.
And I started as a second officer because we were to be trained. Initially we we did ground school call it base, KQ base. They have classes and instructors. Then thereafter for the simulator training or the aircraft training, they took us to Malaysia. We were there for about 2 months. Then came back and started flying as a second officer. Then thereafter you do your checks, became a first officer, and my career took off.
Wow.
So in KQ was nice. I'm grateful that I got a chance to fly for a national airline. And it was nice because KQ by then started expanding. So we were quite lucky.
Okay.
Because after that, flew the Fokker 50 as a first officer. Then thereafter, flew Boeing 737-300, which were actually brand new.
Wow.
They took us to Seattle, where they make the aircraft. It was good to see our aircraft being made in the factory.
Yeah.
Came back, and then thereafter, I I flew the 737 not for too long. Then KQ, then they had the Airbus A310. Then we were promoted to Airbus A310. And now we are still doing international on the 73, but within Africa and Asia. Asia was Dubai, Jeddah, and where else in the 73, and the whole of Africa. Then thereafter, after promotion, became a first officer in the Airbus A310. I started doing Europe, Bombay, all those other places. We also used African routes. Then thereafter, 737, 67, which we were taken to KQ, now bought new ones.
So basically all aircraft in KQ.
Yes.
Okay, so Captain, you have a career that spans well over 20 years.
It's 30.
30 years.
Over 30 years.
Do you have a favorite time of your career? Give us top two. Top 2 favorite points of your career.
Now, I think there are many. Maybe I'm trying to figure out. There are many because almost all of them to me were favorite, because the most important thing to me is I'm serving my country, I'm giving a service to people, and one good thing is that I always enjoyed, and surprisingly, I used also to get feedback from passengers. They'll send me notes, and even send what do you call them?
The flight attendant.
Not the flight attendant. Send the MD. Written commendation. So and so few.
Wow.
Right.
And what was the most memorable thing? Maybe I should say most memorable.
The most memorable one is one that we flew to Abidjan, and there was a coup, and I did a rescue operation where I actually almost ferried or flew all the passengers that were stuck during the fighting. It was not easy because we were stuck there for over 26 hours. There was a lot of fighting, and I felt, I was communicating with the management. It was a crisis. You're stuck there, your aircraft is there, the country is, there's fighting. The fighting mainly was between the Ivorian army, rebels, and then the French armed forces also sucked into it. And now for us, we're caught in between.
Wow.
So that's how now, and I remember it was 2004, October 2004. I think it was 4th October. But luckily, after being stuck there, I was able to evacuate almost all the passengers that were stuck, and I flew them from Abidjan to Accra.
Okay.
Yes, that is my most memorable years. And thereafter, I was acknowledged. The country acknowledged our efforts, my crew and I, and the president. Gave me got a presidential recommendation and got an SS Silver Star.
Yeah.
It's the highest medal for bravery. But to me, I don't see it as if I did anything out of the ordinary. I was actually doing my job, and that just happened to me.
Tell us about that moment when you received the call to go to State House, and here's the late President Mwai Kibaki handing you this very coveted award. How was it for you?
For me, I saw, surprisingly, I've never taken something out of context or as if it's a very, very important. But to me, being recognized to me was something. And what does it mean to me and my family? And the people who really put in their coin, they're seeing on TV. You see, it's like my prayers were heard. I don't have to go and advertise myself. Events and my career was advertising me up to this day. Yeah. So I think I feel satisfied putting our country on the world map. And I being part of it is a joy. And even to have you people come and interview me, I feel I feel a lot of joy. and at the same time, because you're not being forced to come here, it is out, you really want to see who is this guy. But to me, it never strikes me that it's something out of the ordinary. Me, I find it very ordinary because who is, when you play a role or a part in changing the narrative, and especially of races, of people, that anything is possible as long as you put your mind into it and you work hard towards achieving it. And the dreams are valid. Every dream is valid. I'm sorry to say that it is not something that I planned, and it's not something that I foresaw coming. Some of us might look like we are crazy. Somebody might call us crazy.